The fluorescent lights of Chicago O'Hare International Airport buzzed overhead as 23-year-old Maya Rodriguez clutched her worn duffel bag tighter. Her twin daughters, 3-year-old Emma and Sophia, had finally stopped crying after hours of exhaustion. What she didn't know was that in the next few minutes, her life would change forever when she accidentally fell asleep on a stranger's lap. A stranger who happened to be one of the most powerful men in America. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Maya's stomach growled as she watched the departure board flicker with delayed flights. Storm clouds had rolled in over Chicago, grounding nearly every aircraft for the past 6 hours. She counted the crumpled bills in her wallet. $37. Not enough for hotel rooms, barely enough for food. Emma tugged at her mother's faded jeans. "Mommy, I'm hungry." "Me too," Sophia whispered, her small voice barely audible over the airport's constant hum of announcements and rolling luggage. Maya knelt down to their level, smoothing their dark curls. "I know, babies. We'll get something soon, okay?" The lie tasted bitter. She'd already spent $18 on a single sandwich they'd shared hours ago. The twins deserved so much more than this, more than sleeping on airport floors, more than wearing the same clothes for 3 days straight, more than a mother who couldn't afford to give them a proper meal. 6 months ago, Maya had been a nursing student in Phoenix with a part-time job at a local diner. Life wasn't luxurious, but it was manageable. Then her ex-boyfriend Marcus disappeared overnight, leaving behind only unpaid bills and empty promises. The eviction notice came 3 weeks later. Maya had sold everything except the essentials, packed their lives into 2 suitcases, and bought 3 one-way tickets to Detroit, where her Aunt Carmen had promised them a place to stay. But Aunt Carmen's number went straight to voicemail when Maya called from Phoenix Sky Harbor, then again from their layover in Chicago. Now stranded in O'Hare, with no backup plan and dwindling funds, Maya felt the familiar weight of desperation settling on her shoulders. She found a quiet corner near gate B-17, away from the main crowds. The leather seats were worn but clean. Emma and Sophia curled up on either side of her, their small bodies trembling with exhaustion. Maya wrapped her arms around them, creating a protective cocoon. "Tell us the princess story," Emma mumbled against her mother's shoulder. Maya's voice was barely a whisper as she began the familiar tale about 2 brave princesses who could overcome any obstacle together. Within minutes, both girls were fast, asleep, their steady breathing the only sound that mattered in the chaotic airport. 3 gates away, Alexander Kane sat in the VIP lounge, his phone pressed to his ear as he managed a crisis that could cost his company millions. At 34, he'd built Kane Industries from a small tech startup into a global empire worth $12 billion. Tonight's emergency board meeting in New York couldn't wait, but Mother Nature had other plans. "The Shanghai deal is falling. Apart," his assistant Jennifer's voice crackled through the phone. "The investors are getting cold feet without your signature tonight." Alexander ran a hand through his dark hair, his tailored suit somehow still crisp despite the long day. "Push the meeting to tomorrow morning. I'll handle the investors personally." "Sir, with respect, they've been very clear about the timeline. If we don't close tonight, then we don't close tonight." Alexander's voice carried the quiet authority that had made him legendary in boardrooms across the world. "Some things are more important than money, Jennifer." She paused, clearly surprised by his response. Alexander Kane was known for his relentless pursuit of success, his ability to close deals that others deemed impossible. This sudden shift in priorities was unlike him. "I need to go," Alexander said, ending the call. Something had caught his attention through the glass walls of the VIP lounge. A young woman with 2 small children huddled together in the main terminal. He'd noticed them hours ago when they first arrived, watching as the woman's shoulders had gradually sagged with each delay announcement. There was something about the way she held those children, the fierce protectiveness in her posture even in sleep, that reminded him of his own mother during their darkest days. Alexander had grown up in Detroit's East Side, where his single mother worked 3 jobs to keep food on the table. He remembered nights when she'd go without dinner so he and his sister could eat, remembered the way she'd hold them close when the electricity got cut off, whispering that everything would be okay. That same strength, that same desperate love, radiated from the young woman across the terminal. Without fully understanding why, Alexander left the comfort of the VIP lounge and walked toward the main seating area. He told himself he was just stretching his legs, but his feet carried him directly to gate B17. The woman was younger than he'd initially thought, maybe early 20s, with the kind of natural beauty that didn't need makeup or expensive clothes to shine through. Dark circles under her eyes spoke of sleepless nights and endless worry. Her arms were wrapped protectively around 2 identical little girls, both with the same dark curls and olive skin as their mother. Alexander found himself sitting down across from them, far enough away not to disturb their sleep, but close enough to keep watch. He wasn't sure what he was protecting them from, maybe just the harsh reality of their situation, which was written clearly in their worn clothes, and the way the mother's hand never left her small purse, even in sleep. An hour passed. Alexander answered emails and reviewed contracts, but his attention kept drifting to the small family. Other travelers came and went, some casting curious glances at the unusual sight of a man in a $3,000 suit sitting near what appeared to be a homeless family. Around midnight, one of the twins stirred. The little girl with slightly longer hair opened her eyes and looked directly at Alexander. Instead of fear, her expression showed only curiosity. "Are you a prince?" she whispered, careful not to wake her sister or mother. Alexander smiled, charmed, despite himself. "What makes you think that? You have a fancy suit like the princes in Mommy's stories, and you're watching over us like princes do." "I'm just a man who couldn't sleep," Alexander replied softly. "What's your name?" "Emma. That's my sister Sophia, and that's my mommy Maya. We're going to see Aunt Carmen, but she's not answering her phone." The little girl's matter-of-fact tone broke Alexander's heart. Children shouldn't have to worry about such adult problems. "I'm Alexander, and I think your mommy is very brave." Emma nodded solemnly. "She tells us stories about brave princesses. She says we're brave too." Before Alexander could respond, Maya began to stir. Her eyes fluttered open, and for a moment she seemed disoriented. Then she saw Alexander sitting nearby, and her entire body tensed. "It's okay," Alexander said quickly, raising his hands to show he meant no harm. "I was just keeping an eye on things. Airport security, you know." Maya's protective instincts flared immediately. She pulled both girls closer, studying Alexander's face for any sign of threat. Rich men didn't usually pay attention to struggling single mothers unless they wanted something. "We're fine," Maya said firmly. "We don't need anything." But even as she spoke, Sophia began to cough, a harsh rattling sound that had been getting worse over the past 2 days. Maya's face went pale as she felt her daughter's forehead. The fever was back, and stronger than before. Alexander noticed the change immediately. "Is she sick?" "It's nothing," Maya lied, but her voice cracked with worry. "Just a little cold." Sophia's cough intensified, and other passengers began to stare. Maya felt the familiar burn of shame, the weight of judgment, from strangers who couldn't understand her situation. She started to gather their few belongings, preparing to find another spot where they wouldn't be noticed. "Wait," Alexander said gently. "You don't have to leave." "Yes, we do." Maya's voice was barely controlled. "People like you don't want people Like us, around. The words hit Alexander harder than she'd intended. He thought of his mother, of all the times she'd felt that same shame, that same need to hide their poverty from the world. "You're wrong," he said quietly. "Some of us remember what it's like." Maya paused, something in his tone making her look at him more carefully. Behind the expensive clothes and confident bearing, she glimpsed something familiar, the shadow of someone who'd once been where she was now. Sophia's cough grew worse, and Maya's resolve finally cracked. Tears she'd been holding back for days began to fall as she held her sick daughter close, feeling more alone and helpless than ever before. What happened next would change everything for both of them, setting in motion a series of events that would transform 3 lives forever. But at that moment, sitting in the harsh fluorescent glow of Gate B17, Maya Rodriguez had no idea that the stranger across from her was about to become the most important person in her world. Alexander watched. Maya's composure crumble as Sophia's cough turned into labored wheezing. Without hesitation, he pulled out his phone and dialed a number most people would kill to have. "Dr. Patricia Wells, please. Tell her it's Alexander Kane, and it's urgent." Maya looked up through her tears, confusion mixing with desperation. "What are you doing?" "Getting help." Alexander's voice was calm but determined. "Dr. Wells, I need a favor. I'm at O'Hare with a sick child who needs immediate attention." "Yes, I know what time it is." Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time. So if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Within minutes, Dr. Wells had arranged for a pediatric specialist to meet them at Northwestern Memorial Hospital, but there was one problem: getting there through the storm that had shut down most of Chicago's transportation. "My driver can't make it through the flooding on the interstate," Alexander explained after ending another call, "but I have another option." He led Maya and the twins through a series of corridors she'd never seen before, past security checkpoints, where guards nodded respectfully at Alexander without asking questions. They emerged onto a private section of the tarmac where a sleek helicopter waited, its pilot already running pre-flight checks. "I can't afford this," Maya said, stopping abruptly. The reality of what was happening hit her like a physical blow. "I don't have insurance. I can't pay for a helicopter. I can't—" "You're not paying for anything," Alexander said firmly. "And before you argue, think about your daughter." Sophia had grown quiet in Maya's arms, her breathing shallow and rapid. Emma clung to her mother's leg, sensing the gravity of the situation, even if she couldn't understand it. The helicopter ride took 12 minutes. Maya had never been in any aircraft smaller than a commercial jet, and under different circumstances, she might have been terrified. But watching Sophia struggle to breathe pushed all other fears aside. Alexander sat across from them, speaking quietly into his phone, arranging things Maya couldn't even begin to comprehend. At Northwestern Memorial, Dr. Sarah Chen was waiting with a full pediatric team. Sophia was whisked away immediately, leaving Maya pacing the hallway while Emma dozed in a comfortable chair. Alexander had disappeared somewhere, presumably handling the administrative details that would have overwhelmed Maya completely. "Mrs. Rodriguez?" Dr. Chen emerged from the examination room 2 hours later. "Sophia has pneumonia, but we caught it early. She'll need to stay overnight for observation and IV antibiotics, but she's going to be fine." Maya's legs nearly gave out with relief. "Can I see her?" "Of course, she's asking for you." Sophia looked tiny in the hospital bed, but her breathing was already easier thanks to the nebulizer treatment. Her eyes lit up when she saw her mother and sister. "Mommy, the nice doctor gave me medicine that tastes like strawberries," Sophia whispered. "And look, they have cartoons on the TV." Emma climbed carefully onto the bed beside her sister, and for the first time in days, both twins seemed relaxed and content. Maya felt tears of gratitude threatening to spill over again. "The financial arrangements have been handled," Alexander's voice came from the doorway. He'd changed from his expensive suit into jeans and a simple sweater, making him look younger and more approachable. Maya turned to face him, overwhelmed by everything that had happened. "Why are you doing this? You don't even know us." Alexander was quiet for a long moment, watching the twins giggle at the cartoon on the television screen. "When I was 7 years old, my sister got pneumonia. My mother worked 2 jobs, but we still couldn't afford proper medical care. We waited in the emergency room for 14 hours before anyone would see her." He paused, the memory clearly painful even after all these years. She recovered, but barely. "I swore that night that if I ever had the power to help someone in that situation, I would, no questions asked." Maya studied his face, seeing sincerity she hadn't expected. "What happened to your family?" "My mother died when I was in college. Cancer that went undiagnosed too long because she couldn't afford regular checkups. My sister Elena lives in Portland now. She's a social worker, helps kids in situations like you're in." The honesty in his voice broke down Maya's last defensive. "Walls, I'm sorry, I misjudged you. You protected your children from a stranger. That's exactly what you should have done." A nurse entered to check Sophia's vitals, and Alexander stepped into the hallway with Maya. The hospital was quieter now, with only the essential night staff moving through the corridors. "What happens now?" Maya asked. "After Sophia's discharged, we still don't have anywhere to go." Alexander had been thinking about this very question for the past 2 hours. His initial instinct was to offer them money, a hotel room, maybe help finding Maya's aunt. But something deeper was stirring, a connection he hadn't felt in years, a sense of purpose beyond building his empire. "I have a proposition," he said carefully. "My company is developing a new healthcare initiative, making medical care accessible to underserved communities. I need someone with real experience, someone who understands what it's like to navigate the system from your position." Maya frowned. "I don't understand. I'm offering you a job, Director of Community Outreach. It would involve traveling, speaking at conferences, helping design programs that actually work. The salary would be enough to support you and the twins, comfortably." "I don't have a college degree," Maya said immediately. "I was in nursing school, but you have something more valuable than a degree. You have authentic experience and the intelligence to articulate it. I've watched you tonight, how you handle crisis, how you prioritize, how you love those girls. Those aren't skills you learn in a classroom." Maya felt overwhelmed by the magnitude of what he was suggesting. "This is crazy. You don't offer jobs to strangers you meet in airports." "I don't do a lot of things I did tonight," Alexander admitted. "But sometimes the best decisions are the ones that feel impossible." Before Maya could respond, Emma appeared in the doorway. "Mummy, Sophia wants you to come back. She says the IV makes her arm feel funny." As Maya returned to her daughter's bedside, Alexander remained in the hallway, making phone calls that would change everything. He arranged for a suite at the Four Seasons for Maya and the twins, contacted his legal team to draw up an employment contract, and called his head of HR to begin the unconventional hiring process. But beyond the practical arrangements, something more profound was happening. For the first time since building his fortune, Alexander felt like his wealth was serving a purpose greater than acquisition and growth. And Maya, despite her exhaustion and confusion, felt a spark of hope she hadn't experienced in months. Neither of them could have predicted that this chance encounter would evolve into something that would transform not just their professional lives, but their hearts as well. As Sophia drifted off to sleep with her sister curled beside her, and Maya dozed in the uncomfortable hospital chair, Alexander Kane made a decision that would ripple through all their lives in ways none of them could imagine. The storm that had stranded them in Chicago was beginning to clear, but the real journey was just beginning. 3 weeks later, Maya stood in front of the floor-to-ceiling windows of the Kane Industries headquarters on the 40th floor, watching Chicago's skyline stretch endlessly before her. The twins were in the building's state-of-the-art childcare center, a facility Alexander had expedited specifically for his new director of community outreach. Still feels surreal, doesn't it? Maya turned to find Jennifer Walsh, Alexander's assistant, approaching with 2 cups of coffee. Over the past weeks, Jennifer had become an unexpected ally, helping Maya navigate the corporate world with patience and genuine warmth. "Every morning I wake up thinking I'm going to find myself back in that airport," Maya admitted, accepting the coffee gratefully. "This office, the apartment, Emma and Sophia having their own rooms. It's like someone else's life." "Alexander doesn't make decisions lightly," Jennifer said. "When he believes in something, he commits completely. The board had some concerns about hiring someone without traditional qualifications, but he fought for you." Maya felt a familiar flutter of anxiety. What kind of concerns? The usual corporate nonsense. They questioned whether you could handle speaking at medical conferences, working with hospital administrators, managing a multi-million-dollar budget. Jennifer's expression showed exactly what she thought of those concerns. Then Alexander showed them your presentation on healthcare accessibility from the patient perspective. Room went dead silent. The presentation had been Maya's idea. A detailed analysis of every barrier she'd encountered trying to get medical care for her daughters over the past year. She'd mapped out the maze of insurance requirements, wait times, transportation issues, and hidden costs that made healthcare virtually inaccessible for families like hers. What had started as personal frustration became a comprehensive policy proposal. Dr. Martinez from Johns Hopkins called it brilliant, Jennifer continued. Said it was the most practical healthcare reform strategy he'd seen in 20 years. Before Maya could respond, Alexander's voice came from the conference room doorway. "Maya, do you have a minute? There's someone I'd like you to meet." Inside the glass-walled conference room, a distinguished woman in her 50s was reviewing documents spread across the mahogany table. She looked up as Maya entered, her sharp eyes immediately assessing. "Maya Rodriguez, meet Senator Patricia Whitman, chair of the Senate Subcommittee on Healthcare Innovation." Maya's heart skipped. She'd seen Senator Whitman on news programs, knew her reputation as a fierce advocate for healthcare reform. The senator stood and extended her hand with a genuine smile. "Ms. Rodriguez, I've been reading your proposal with great interest. Your insights into systemic barriers are exactly what we need to inform federal policy." "Thank you, Senator, but I'm not sure I understand." "Alexander has recommended you to testify before our subcommittee next month," Senator Whitman explained. "Your personal experience combined with your analytical approach could be instrumental in passing the Healthcare Access Act." Maya looked between Alexander and the senator, feeling overwhelmed. "Testify before Congress. I've never done anything like that." "Neither had I before my first time," Senator Whitman said warmly. "But authenticity can't be taught or coached. Your voice represents millions of Americans who've been failed by our current system." After the senator left, Maya found herself alone with Alexander in his office. The space was elegant but surprisingly personal. Family photos, books that looked actually read, a child's drawing that Maya recognized as Emma's work taped to his computer monitor. "You kept Emma's drawing," she said, touched by the gesture. "She gave it to me last week when I picked you all up for dinner. Said it was a picture of a superhero who helps families." Alexander's smile was soft. "I told her I wasn't a superhero, but she insisted that anyone who helps people must be one." Maya sat in the leather chair across from his desk, studying the man who'd transformed their lives. Over the past weeks, she'd seen different sides of him. The ruthless businessman in board meetings, the patient mentor helping her navigate, Corporate politics, the gentle man who'd spent an entire evening reading bedtime stories when Emma had nightmares about hospitals. Why me, Alexander? Really? You could have donated money to existing charities, funded established organizations. Why take a chance on someone you met in an airport? Alexander was quiet for a long moment, his fingers drumming thoughtfully on the desk. Do you remember what Emma asked me that night? If I was a prince? Maya nodded. I've spent 15 years building this company, accumulating wealth and power. But until I met you three, I'd forgotten what it felt like to actually help someone. Not write a check or attend a charity gala, but to genuinely change someone's life for the better. He stood and walked to the window, his silhouette outlined against the afternoon sky. My mother used to say that money without purpose is just expensive loneliness. I was starting to understand what she meant. Maya felt something shift in her chest, a warmth that had nothing to do with gratitude and everything to do with the growing feelings she'd been trying to ignore. Working closely with Alexander had revealed layers of complexity that intrigued her. His dedication to his employees, his quiet philanthropy that never made headlines, the way he genuinely listened. When she spoke about healthcare policy, there's something else, Alexander continued, turning back to face her. The board wants to expand the healthcare initiative nationally. They're offering you the position of executive director, overseeing programs in 12 major cities. Maya's breath caught. Executive director? It would mean more travel, higher stakes, congressional testimonies becoming regular occurrences, but also the chance to impact millions of families facing what you faced. The magnitude of the opportunity was staggering. 6 months ago, she'd been sleeping on airport floors. Now she was being offered a position that could reshape healthcare policy across the country. What about Emma and Sophia? She asked practically. They need stability. Routine. They'd come with you when possible. Stay in Chicago with carefully. Vetted care when necessary. We'd provide everything they need. The best schools, healthcare, security. Alexander paused. They'd also have something else they've never had before. What's that? A mother who's changing the world. That evening, Maya sat on the floor of their new apartment's living room, watching Emma and Sophia build an elaborate castle out of blocks. The space was beautiful. Hardwood floors, modern kitchen, bedrooms filled with toys the twins had never dreamed of owning. But what struck Maya most was how safe they all felt here. Mommy, are you going to be on TV again? Emma asked, looking up from her construction project. Maya had done 2 news interviews about the healthcare initiative, and both twins had been fascinated by seeing their mother on television. Maybe, sweetheart. Would that be okay with you? Can we tell people you're a superhero too? Sophia asked seriously. Like Mr. Alexander. Maya smiled, remembering Alexander's story about Emma's drawing. What makes you think I'm a superhero? You help sick kids like me get better, Sophia said, matter-of-factly. And you're not scared of important people like that lady in the fancy suit. Senator Whitman had visited their apartment the previous week, wanting to understand Maya's perspective in a more personal setting. The twins had been polite, but unimpressed by political titles, treating the senator like any other adult visitor. Maya tucked the girls into their beds later that night. She reflected on the impossible journey that had brought them here. From desperation in an airport to congressional testimony in less than a month. It felt like a fairy tale, except fairy tales didn't usually involve healthcare policy and Senate subcommittees. Her phone buzzed with a text from Alexander. Dinner. Tomorrow. I want to discuss the executive director position properly. Also, Emma left her stuffed elephant in my office again. Maya smiled as she typed back, yes to dinner. And that elephant goes everywhere she does. I think she's claiming your office as her territory. His response came quickly. Good, someone should. As Maya prepared for bed in her own room, a luxury she'd almost forgotten existed, She realized that somewhere between the airport and this moment, her feelings for Alexander had evolved far beyond gratitude. The thought both thrilled and terrified her. She was about to embark on the most important work of her life, and falling for her boss could complicate everything. But as she drifted off to sleep, Maya couldn't shake the feeling that some complications were worth the risk. The marble halls of the Russell Senate office building echoed with Maya's footsteps as she walked toward the hearing room. 6 weeks had passed since her dinner with Alexander, where she'd accepted the executive director position. Now, dressed in a navy suit that Jennifer had helped her select, Maya was about to face her biggest challenge yet. "Remember, speak from the heart," Alexander said quietly as they paused outside the hearing room doors. "Your story is more powerful than any statistics they could cite." Maya nodded, though her hands trembled slightly as she clutched her prepared remarks. Inside, she could hear the low murmur of voices, the shuffling of papers, the weight of democracy. "In action, the opposition will try to discredit you," Senator Whitman had warned during their preparation session. "They'll say you're too emotional, too inexperienced. Don't let them rattle you." The hearing room was packed with journalists, healthcare executives, and lobbyists. Maya took her place at the witness table, facing a semicircle of senators who held the power to transform healthcare for millions of Americans. The Healthcare Access Act had been stalled in committee for months, but Maya's testimony could provide the momentum needed to move it forward. Senator Whitman called the hearing to order, and Maya was introduced as the executive director of the Kane Foundation Healthcare Initiative. The title still felt foreign on her tongue, but the work it represented had become her passion. "Ms. Rodriguez," Senator Whitman began, "please tell the committee about your experience navigating our healthcare system as a single mother." Maya had practiced this moment dozens of times, but facing the actual senators felt different. She thought of Sophia's labored breathing in that airport, of Emma's frightened eyes, of all the mothers who were facing similar crises at this very moment. "Senators, 2 months ago, my 3-year-old daughter nearly died from pneumonia while we were stranded in an airport, not because treatment didn't exist, but because the system failed us at every level." She described the maze of insurance requirements, the impossible choice between paying rent and seeking medical care, the way poverty became a barrier to basic human dignity. Her voice grew stronger as she spoke, finding rhythm in the truth of her experience. "The current system doesn't just fail the uninsured," Maya continued. "It fails working families who can't afford to take time off, single parents who can't navigate complex bureaucracy while caring for sick children, elderly patients who choose between medication and groceries." Senator James Morrison, a vocal opponent of the Healthcare Access Act, leaned forward. "Ms. Rodriguez, with respect, you're asking us to overhaul a system based on personal anecdotes. Don't you think policy should be based on data, not emotions?" Maya had expected this attack. "Senator Morrison, I have data. Over the past 6 weeks, our initiative has surveyed 15,000 families across 12 cities. 73% have delayed medical care due to cost. 42% have filed for bankruptcy due to medical debt. 61% of parents report that their children's healthcare needs have forced them to choose between medical care and basic necessities." She pulled out a thick folder of research. "But behind every statistic is a family like mine, a child like Sophia. The data tells us what's happening, but lived experience tells us why it matters." Senator Morrison's expression shifted, but he pressed on. "Even if we accept your numbers, the Healthcare Access Act would cost taxpayers billions. How do we justify that expense?" "How do we justify not acting?" Maya countered. "The emergency room visit could have been prevented with accessible primary care. The chronic condition became acute because medication was unaffordable. the lost productivity when parents can't work because they're caring for sick children who couldn't get timely treatment. She looked directly at Senator Morrison. "Senator, what's the cost of a 3-year-old's life? Because that's what we're really debating here." The room fell silent. Maya could feel the weight of every eye on her, but she no longer felt nervous. This wasn't about her anymore. It was about every family sitting in emergency rooms, every parent making impossible choices, every child who deserved better. Senator Rebecca Chen from California spoke next. "Ms. Rodriguez, your proposal includes mobile clinics and community health workers. How would these programs address the systemic issues you've identified?" Maya smiled, feeling more confident. This was her territory now. Senator Chen. Traditional. Healthcare delivery assumes patients can travel to centralized facilities during business hours. Our mobile clinics bring care directly to underserved communities, housing projects, rural areas, workplace sites. She described the pilot programs, already showing results in Chicago, Detroit, and Phoenix. Immunization rates up 60%. Emergency room visits down 40%. Chronic disease management improved dramatically. Community health workers come from the populations they serve, Maya continued. They understand the barriers because they've lived through them. They speak the language, know the culture, and can navigate the system in ways that traditional providers often can't. The questioning continued for 2 hours. Maya faced skepticism about costs, implementation challenges, and political feasibility. But with each question, she felt more certain that this work was exactly what she was meant to do. After the hearing, Maya found herself surrounded by journalists and healthcare advocates. The questions came rapid fire. Would the bill pass? What was next for the Kane Foundation? How did it feel to go from homeless to testifying before Congress? Ms. Rodriguez handled herself beautifully, Senator Whitman told a reporter. Her testimony was exactly what this committee needed to hear: authentic, informed, and compelling. Alexander waited for her outside the building, his pride evident in his expression. "You were incredible in there. The way you handled Morrison's questions, the data you presented, it was masterful." "I had good preparation," Maya said, though she felt exhausted from the intensity of the experience. "It was more than preparation. You found your voice, Maya. That's not something that can be taught." As they walked toward the waiting car, Maya's phone buzzed with messages from Jennifer, colleagues and supporters who had watched the hearing. Online, the Kane Foundation's social media accounts were flooded with messages of support and stories from families facing similar struggles. "What happens now?" Maya asked as they settled into the car. "Now we wait for the committee vote. But regardless of what happens with the bill, you've started something important today. People are talking, sharing their stories, demanding change." That evening, Maya sat in her hotel room video calling Emma and Sophia. They were staying with Mrs. Chen, the grandmother who'd become their regular caregiver when Maya traveled for work. "Mummy, were you on TV again?" Emma asked excitedly. "I was talking to important people about helping sick kids," Maya explained, "like when Sophia was sick and we met Mr. Alexander. Are you going to help other mummies like you helped us?" Sophia asked with the startling insight that children sometimes possess. "I hope so, sweetheart. That's why Mommy has to travel sometimes to help other families." After ending the call, Maya stood at her hotel window, looking out at the Capitol building illuminated against the night sky. 6 months ago, she'd been desperate and alone. Now she was potentially on the verge of influencing national healthcare policy. But success brought new challenges. The executive director position required extensive travel, long hours, and constant pressure. Emma and Sophia were adapting well, but Maya worried about the long-term impact of her frequent absences. And then there was Alexander. Their relationship had evolved into something complex and undefined. Professional respect had deepened into personal connection, but neither had addressed the growing attraction between them. Maya's feelings for him were becoming impossible to ignore, but she wasn't sure if pursuing them would help or hurt everything she'd worked to build. A knock at her hotel room door interrupted her thoughts. She opened it to find Alexander standing in the hallway, holding a bottle of champagne and wearing an expression she couldn't quite read. "I thought we should celebrate," he said. "Win or lose, what you did today was extraordinary." As Maya stepped aside to let him in, she realized that some decisions couldn't be postponed forever. The tension that had been building between them for weeks was about to reach a breaking point, and whatever happened next would change everything once again. Maya stepped back as Alexander entered her hotel room, the champagne bottle catching the soft light from the bedside lamp. The space suddenly felt smaller, more intimate than the grand conference rooms and public hearings where they usually found themselves together. "I shouldn't be here," Alexander said quietly, but he made no move to leave. "This complicates everything we've built." "Everything we've built was complicated from the moment we met," Maya replied, accepting the champagne flute he offered. "A billionaire CEO and a homeless single mother don't exactly follow conventional relationship protocols." They stood by the window, the Capitol dome visible in the distance, both acutely aware of the electricity between them that had been building for months. Maya had tried to convince herself that her feelings were just gratitude, that Alexander's attention was purely professional, but the way he looked at her now made those lies impossible to maintain. "Maya, I need you to know that your position, your success, none of it depends on this," Alexander said, his voice rough with emotion. "What you've accomplished, you did on your own merit. The board respects you, Congress listens to you, the media takes you seriously. That's all you." "I know," Maya said softly, "but I also know that crossing this line changes everything." "Are you afraid of that change?" Maya considered the question as she sipped the champagne. "6 months ago I was afraid of everything. Afraid I couldn't provide for my daughters, afraid they'd be taken away from me, afraid I'd never be anything more than another statistic of the failed system. Now, I'm afraid of different things." "Like what?" "Like losing myself in someone else's world. Like Emma and Sophia growing up thinking that women need rescuing instead of learning they can rescue themselves. Like people dismissing my work because I'm involved with my boss." Alexander set down his champagne and moved closer, his eyes never leaving her face. "And are you willing to risk those fears for this?" Before Maya could answer, her phone rang. Senator Whitman's name appeared on the screen, and Maya's heart jumped. "I have to take this." "Senator Whitman, what's the news?" "Maya, the committee voted. The Healthcare Access Act passed 12-3. It's moving to the full Senate floor next month." Maya felt her knees go weak. "We did it? You did it. Your testimony changed 3 senators' minds. The video has been viewed over 2 million times, and my office has received more calls supporting healthcare reform than any other issue this year." After ending the call, Maya turned to find Alexander watching her with an expression of pure admiration. "The bill passed committee," she said, still stunned by the news. "Of course it did. You were magnificent today. The success, the champagne, the intensity of the moment, it all converged as Alexander stepped closer. When he reached up to touch her face, Maya didn't pull away. "I've been fighting this for months," he whispered, "trying to convince myself that what I feel for you is just professional respect, or protective instinct, or gratitude for reminding me what matters. But it's not any of those things, Alexander. I'm in love with you, Maya, not the woman I helped, not the employee I mentored, not the success story I invested in. You, the woman who fell asleep in an airport and woke up ready to change the world." Maya's breath caught. She'd known this moment was coming, had felt the same feelings growing stronger every day. But hearing the words out loud made it real in a way that terrified and thrilled her. "This is crazy," she whispered even as she leaned into his touch. "We work together. You're my boss. There are power dynamics, potential conflicts of interest. Then, we'll figure it out," Alexander said simply. "Together." When he kissed her, Maya felt something shift inside her chest. Not just desire, but a sense of coming home that she'd never experienced before. For months, she'd been building a new life, a new identity, a new purpose, but this felt like finding the piece that made everything else make sense. They broke apart when Maya's phone buzzed with another call. Emma's face appeared on the video screen, and Maya quickly composed herself before answering. "Mommy, Mrs. Chen said you were on TV again, and lots of people are talking about you online," Emma said excitedly. "Are you famous now?" "Not famous, sweetheart. Just doing important work. Mr. Alexander, are you there too?" Sophia's voice came from off-screen. Alexander moved into view of the camera, and Maya noticed how natural it felt to have him there. "Hi, girls. Your mommy did something amazing today. She always does amazing things," Emma said matter-of-factly. "When are you coming home?" "Tomorrow afternoon," Maya promised. "And then maybe we can celebrate." After ending the call, Maya and Alexander sat on the small couch, the weight of what had just happened settling between them. "The girls adore you," Maya said quietly. "That makes this even more complicated." "Or simpler," Alexander replied. "Maya, I'm not interested in just dating you. I'm not looking for something casual or temporary. I want to build a life with you, with all of you." The declaration was overwhelming in its certainty. Maya had spent so long focused on survival, then on building her career, that she'd almost forgotten what it felt like to be wanted for herself. "What about the foundation? The work we're doing? If this goes wrong—" "It won't go wrong," Alexander said with quiet confidence. "And even if it did, your work stands on its own. The healthcare initiative isn't dependent on me or my company anymore. You've built something bigger than both of us." Maya stood and walked back to the window, processing everything that had changed in the span of a few hours. The bill passing, Alexander's declaration, the future suddenly full of possibilities she hadn't dared to imagine. "I need time to think," she said finally. "This is too important to rush into." Alexander nodded, understanding in his expression. "Take all the time you need, but Maya, know that whatever you decide, it doesn't change what you mean to me, or what you've already achieved." After he left, Maya sat alone in the quiet hotel room, her mind racing. She thought about the woman she'd been 6 months ago, desperate, afraid, convinced that her life was over. Then she thought about the woman she was now, confident, successful, making a real difference in the world. But more than that, she thought about the woman she could become. Not just as a policy advocate or healthcare reformer, but as someone deserving of love, partnership, and happiness. For so long, she'd defined herself by her struggles, her responsibilities, her need to prove she was more than her circumstances. Maybe it was time to define herself by her capacity for joy. The next morning brought a flood of interview requests, meeting invitations, and collaboration proposals. The Healthcare Access Act's committee passage had made Maya a sought-after voice in national healthcare reform. But as she packed for her flight back to Chicago, her thoughts weren't on policy papers or legislative strategy. They were having a conversation she needed to have with her daughters about what it meant when someone special wanted to become part of their family, and on a decision that would determine not just her future, but the future of everyone she'd grown to love. The airplane taking her home felt different from that desperate flight 6 months ago. This time, Maya Rodriguez wasn't running from anything. She was flying toward a life she was finally ready to claim. Maya's return to Chicago was met with an unexpected media circus. Photographers waited outside Kane Industries, reporters called her personal phone, and her testimony video had sparked a nationwide conversation about healthcare reform. But as her taxi pulled up to their apartment building, all Maya could think about was the conversation waiting inside. Emma and Sophia rushed to greet her, their excitement infectious as they showed her the scrapbook Mrs. Chen had helped them create with newspaper clippings and printed articles about Mommy's important job. "Look, Mommy, this lady on TV said you were inspiring." Emma read carefully from a printed web page. "What does inspiring mean?" "It means someone who helps other people want to do good things too," Maya explained, pulling both girls onto the couch beside her. "Like how you inspire us to be brave?" Sophia asked, leaning against her mother's shoulder. Maya's heart tightened. Everything she'd built, everything she was considering, had to center around these two little girls who'd already been through too much change. "Girls, I need to talk to you about something important. You know how Mr. Alexander has been spending more time with us lately?" Both twins nodded solemnly. Over the past month, Alexander had joined them for dinner twice a week, had taken them to the zoo, had even helped Emma with a school project about community helpers. "How would you feel if Mr. Alexander became part of our family?" Maya asked, carefully. "Not just as a friend, but as someone who takes care of us the way families do." Emma and Sophia exchanged one of their twin looks, the silent communication that had always amazed Maya. "Would he be our daddy?" Sophia asked quietly. The question hit Maya harder than she'd expected. The girls had never known their biological father and had never asked about him until recently. The concept of having a father figure was both foreign and appealing to them. "That would be up to him and us to decide together," Maya said honestly. "But it would mean he'd be here more, and we'd make decisions together, and he'd help take care of you when I travel for work." "Would we still live here?" Emma asked practically. "We'd figure that out together too, but no matter what, you two are my priority. Nothing changes that." Emma considered this seriously. "I think Mr. Alexander would be a good daddy. He listens when we talk, and he doesn't get mad when Sophia spills things, and he knows all the words to our bedtime songs," Sophia added. "Plus, he brings us books we actually want to read." Maya smiled despite her nervousness. Trust her daughters to cut straight to what mattered: kindness, attention, and good storytelling. "So you'd be okay if Mr. Alexander and I decided to be together? Does that mean we get to keep the elephant room?" Emma asked, referring to the themed bedroom in Alexander's penthouse where they'd spent the night during a recent sleepover. "I think that can be arranged," Maya laughed. The next morning brought an unexpected visitor. Maya opened the door to find a woman in her 50s with familiar dark eyes and Alexander's determined jawline. "You must be Maya," the woman said with a warm smile. "I'm Elena Kane, Alexander's sister. I hope you don't mind me dropping by unannounced." Maya invited her in, curious about the woman Alexander spoke of with such obvious affection. Elena Kane was nothing like Maya had expected. No designer clothes or pretentious mannerisms, just comfortable jeans and the practical bearing of someone who worked with her hands. "I run a non-profit in Portland," Eleanor explained as they sat in Maya's living room. "Family support services for single parents. When Alexander told me about you, I had to come see for myself." "See what for yourself?" Elena's smile was knowing. "Whether you were real or if my brother had finally lost his mind. He's been different these past months, happier, more purposeful. I haven't seen him like this since before our mother died." He told me about your mother," Maya said softly. "I'm sorry for your loss." "She would have loved you," Elena said with certainty. "Not because you needed help, but because of how you fought for your daughters. Mama always said the strongest people are the ones who protect others while they're falling apart themselves." Before Maya could respond, Emma and Sophia burst through the front door, home from their morning at the park with Mrs. Chen. They stopped short when they saw the stranger, their natural shyness kicking in. "Girls, this is Ms. Elena, Mr. Alexander's sister." Maya introduced them. Elena's face lit up as she knelt to their level. "Alexander told me so much about you two. Emma, he said you're the artist who made his office more colorful. And Sophia, I heard you're the brave one who taught him about princess stories." Both girls warmed immediately to Elena's genuine interest. Within minutes they were showing her their toys, their artwork, and the view from their bedroom windows. Maya watched the interaction with growing appreciation for the Kane family's capacity for authentic connection. "They're remarkable," Elena said later as the twins played in their room. "Resilient, confident, secure. That doesn't happen by accident." "I've made a lot of mistakes," Maya admitted. "There were times I wasn't sure I was doing anything right." "The fact that you worried about it means you were doing everything right," Eleanor replied. "Can I ask you something personal?" Maya nodded. "Are you in love with my brother?" The directness of the question caught Maya off guard, but Eleanor's expression was kind, not challenging. "Yes," Maya said simply, "but it's complicated. Love usually is. But here's what I know about Alexander. He doesn't do anything halfway. If he's told you he loves you, he means it completely. The question is whether you're ready to love him the same way." That afternoon, Maya found herself walking through Millennium Park, needing space to think. Her phone buzzed constantly with interview requests and meeting invitations, but she ignored them all. The Healthcare Access Act had passed committee, her professional future was secure, and the twins were happy and thriving. So why was she still afraid? Mama always said fear was just love wearing a disguise. Eleanor's voice echoed in her memory from their conversation. "You're not afraid of Alexander. You're afraid of how much you love him." Maya's phone rang, and Alexander's name appeared on the screen. She hesitated for a moment before answering. "How was your first day back?" he asked, his voice warm and familiar, overwhelming. "Your sister stopped by." "Elena's in town?" Alexander sounded surprised. "She didn't tell me she was coming." "She wanted to meet the woman who'd changed her brother. Her words, not mine." Alexander was quiet for a moment. "And what did you think of her?" "I think your mother raised remarkable children," Maya said honestly. "I also think your sister has excellent timing." "Maya, about the other night." "I've made my decision," Maya interrupted, her heart pounding. "But I want to tell you in person. Can you come over tonight after the girls are asleep?" "Of course." "Maya, whatever you've decided, I want you to know—" "Tonight," Maya said firmly. "We'll talk tonight." As she hung up, Maya felt a sense of certainty settling over her. She'd spent 6 months learning to trust her instincts about policy, about public speaking, about her own capabilities. Now it was time to trust her instincts about love. The woman who'd fallen asleep on a stranger's lap in an airport had been running from a life that felt impossible. The woman she'd become was ready to run toward a life that felt too good to be true. But sometimes, Maya realized as she watched the Chicago skyline glow in the afternoon sun, the impossible and the too good to be true were exactly the same thing. Alexander arrived at Maya's apartment at 9 o'clock sharp, carrying a small gift bag and wearing an expression that mixed hope with resignation. He'd clearly prepared himself for rejection, which made Maya's heart ache for what she was about to tell him. "Before you say anything," Alexander began as she let him in, "I want you to know that whatever you've decided, it doesn't change my feelings, and it doesn't change my commitment to the Foundation's work or your career." Maya smiled, taking the gift bag from his hands. "What's this?" "Something for the girls. Eleanor helped me pick it out during her visit to Portland last month. Inside were 2 matching lockets, each engraved with a small elephant, Emma's favorite animal since their first night in his office. Maya's throat tightened at the thoughtfulness of the gesture. "Alexander, sit down, please." He settled onto her couch, his hands clasped tightly in his lap. Maya had seen him command boardrooms full of aggressive executives, had watched him testify before regulatory committees without breaking a sweat. But sitting in her living room, waiting to hear about their future, he looked vulnerable in a way that made her love him even more. "I talked to the girls about us," Maya began, settling beside him, "about what it would mean if you became part of our family." Alexander's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "And? Emma wants to know if we get to keep the elephant room in your penthouse. Sophia asked if you'd officially be their daddy." Maya's voice softened. "They both think you'd be good at it." "Maya, I also talked to your sister. She's remarkable, by the way. She told me something that I can't stop thinking about." Alexander waited, his entire body tense with anticipation. "She said that fear is just love wearing a disguise." And she was right. "I'm not afraid of you, Alexander. I'm not afraid of your wealth or your world, or even the complications this brings to our work. I'm afraid of how completely I love you." Alexander's breath caught hope beginning to replace the guarded expression on his face. "6 months ago, I was a woman who had lost everything," Maya continued. "I defined myself by my failures, my struggles, my inability to provide for my daughters. But you saw something else. You saw someone worth believing in before I believed in myself." She stood and walked to the window, looking out at the city lights that no longer felt foreign and intimidating. "I spent weeks convincing myself that what I felt for you was just gratitude, that I was confusing rescue with love. But that's not what this is it?" "No," Alexander said quietly, standing to move closer to her. "What I feel for you has nothing to do with helping you and everything to do with who you are. Your strength, your intelligence, your fierce love for those girls. The way you turned your pain into purpose and your struggle into advocacy for others." Maya turned to face him, tears threatening to spill over. "I love you, Alexander Kane, not because you saved us, but because you saw us, really saw us, when the rest of the world looked right through us." When he kissed her this time, it felt different from their first kiss in the hotel. That had been about desire and possibility. This was about certainty and commitment, about choosing each other fully, with eyes wide open to both the challenges and the joy ahead. "What does this mean for us practically?" Maya asked when they broke apart. "The foundation, our work, the media attention? It means we figure it out together," Alexander replied. "I've already spoken to the board about transferring the foundation to independent oversight. Your position, your salary, your authority, none of it depends on me anymore. You've built something bigger than both of us." Maya felt a weight she hadn't realized she was carrying lift from her shoulders. "And personally?" "Personally, I want to marry you. I want to adopt Emma and Sophia if they'll have me. I want to build a life where your work can flourish and our family can grow, and we can show the world that love stories don't always start with fairy tale beginnings." The proposal, if that's what it was, took Maya's breath away. "Alexander, I'm not asking for an answer tonight," he said quickly. "I know this is all happening fast, but I want you to know that's where my heart is. That's what I'm hoping." Before Maya could respond, a small voice came from the hallway. "Mommy, is everything okay?" Emma stood in the doorway in her pajamas, rubbing sleepy eyes. Behind her, Sophia peered around the corner with the stuffed elephant that had become her constant companion. "Everything's perfect, sweetheart," Maya said, kneeling to Emma's level. "Mr. Alexander and I were just talking about our family." "Are you crying happy tears or sad tears?" Sophia asked, with the intuitive wisdom of childhood. "Very happy tears," Maya assured her. Emma studied both adults carefully. "Does this mean Mr. Alexander is going to stay?" Maya looked up at Alexander, seeing her own emotions reflected in his face. Would you like him to stay? Yes, both girls said simultaneously, then giggled at their twin timing. Then he's staying, Maya said simply. The next morning brought unexpected visitors to Maya's apartment. Jennifer Walsh arrived with coffee and pastries, followed closely by Eleanor Kane, who'd apparently extended her Chicago visit. I hope you don't mind, Jennifer said as Maya let them in. Alexander told us the good news, and Eleanor insisted on celebrating properly. Also, there's something we need to discuss, Eleanor added, her expression turning serious. The media has gotten wind of your relationship. There's going to be scrutiny, probably some negative coverage about workplace relationships and power dynamics. Maya felt her stomach drop. She'd been so focused on the personal aspects of their relationship that she hadn't fully considered the public relations implications. How bad? She asked. Manageable, Jennifer said confidently. Your professional credentials speak for themselves. The Healthcare Access Act passed the committee because of your testimony, not your personal relationships. But we need to get ahead of the narrative. Elena pulled out her laptop, showing Maya several news articles that had already been published. The headlines ranged from supportive, healthcare advocate finds love with philanthropist CEO, to skeptical, from homeless to penthouse, the Cinderella story that's too good to be true. The key is transparency, Elena explained. Don't hide the relationship, but make it clear that your professional achievements stand on their own merit. And Maya, don't let anyone diminish what you've accomplished. Alexander arrived an hour later, having dealt with his own set of media calls and board meetings. His expression was grim as he sat down with the group. The opposition to the Healthcare Access Act is trying to use our relationship to discredit your testimony, he said, without preamble. They're claiming you're just a spokesperson for Kane Industries, not a legitimate advocate. Maya felt anger flare in her chest. Then we prove them wrong. How? By doing exactly what we've been doing. The bill speaks for itself. The research speaks for itself. My background speaks for itself. If they want to reduce everything I've accomplished to a romance novel that says more about them than it does about us, Jennifer smiled approvingly. Spoken like someone who's ready for the big leagues. What big leagues? Senator Whitman called this morning, Alexander said, his expression shifting from concern to pride. The Senate Majority Leader wants you to testify when the full Senate debates the Healthcare Access Act next month. If it passes there, it goes to the President's desk. Maya felt the familiar thrill of purpose mixing with terror. The full Senate. The full Senate, with national media coverage, C-SPAN broadcast, and the entire country watching. As Maya absorbed the magnitude of what lay ahead, she looked around the room at the people who'd become her chosen family. Jennifer, who'd taught her to navigate corporate politics with grace. Elena, who'd shown her that the Kane family's values ran deeper than wealth. And Alexander, who'd seen her potential before she'd seen it herself. 6 months ago, she'd been afraid of everything. Now she was ready to stand before the most powerful legislative body in the country and fight for millions of families who needed someone to speak for them. Some transformations, Maya realized, were worth every risk. The Senate chamber had never felt more imposing than it did on the morning of the Healthcare Access Act's final debate. Maya stood at the witness table, facing 100 senators who would determine the fate of legislation that could transform healthcare for millions of Americans. The C-SPAN cameras captured every moment, broadcasting her testimony to a nation watching history unfold. 3 months had passed since Alexander's proposal. 3 months of intense preparation, media interviews, and strategic planning. The opposition had done everything possible to undermine Maya's credibility, but their attacks had only strengthened public support for healthcare reform. Ms. Rodriguez, Senate Majority Leader Patricia Hayes began, you've become the face of healthcare advocacy in America. Before we hear your final testimony, the Chamber would like to acknowledge the extraordinary journey that brought you here. Maya nodded, acutely aware that Emma and Sophia were watching from the gallery above. Alexander sat beside them, having taken the morning off from running his empire to witness this moment. Elena and Jennifer flanked the girls, creating a protective circle of family that Maya drew strength from. Senators, 7 months ago, I was a single mother sleeping on airport floors with my sick daughters, choosing between rent money and medical care. Today, I stand before you not as someone asking for pity, but as someone who has lived the failures of our current system and helped design solutions that actually work. She gestured to the thick folder of research before her. Data from pilot programs now operating in 18 cities, testimony from thousands of families, projections showing the long-term economic benefits of preventive care. The Healthcare Access Act isn't a theoretical policy debated in academic circles. It's practical legislation built on real experiences from real families facing impossible choices every day. Senator Morrison, still opposing the bill despite committee passage, leaned forward. Ms. Rodriguez, critics argue that your personal relationship with Kane Industries CEO Alexander Kane compromises your objectivity. How do you respond to allegations that you're simply a well-compensated spokesperson? Maya had expected this attack, had prepared for it extensively, but instead of defensiveness, she felt only clarity about her purpose. Senator Morrison, I fell in love with Alexander Kane because of his character, not his bank account. But even if I hadn't, my testimony today stands on its own merits. The pilot programs showing reduced emergency room visits by 43% weren't invented in a boardroom. They were developed by healthcare workers, social workers, and community advocates who understand barriers to care. She pulled out a tablet, displaying charts that had been projected on screens throughout the chamber. The 15,000 families we've surveyed, the 800 community health workers we've trained, the 12 mobile clinics now operating in underserved areas. None of that exists because of my personal relationships. It exists because evidence-based policy works when it's designed by people who understand the problems. Senator Chen from California smiled approvingly. Ms. Rodriguez, can you walk us through the projected impact if this legislation passes? Maya felt her confidence surge. This was her territory now, the intersection of lived experience and policy expertise that she'd spent months mastering. Senator Chen, our projections show the Healthcare Access Act will reduce preventable hospitalizations by 35% within 2 years. Emergency room visits for non-emergency care will drop by half. Childhood immunization rates will increase to 95% nationally. Most importantly, we estimate preventing approximately 40,000 deaths annually from treatable conditions that currently go undiagnosed. The chamber fell silent at that statistic. Maya continued, her voice carrying the weight of personal conviction. But beyond the numbers are the families like mine. Parents who won't have to choose between insulin and groceries. Children who won't suffer because their mothers are afraid of medical bills they can't afford. Working families who won't face bankruptcy because someone got cancer. Senator Morrison made one final attempt to derail her testimony. Even accepting your projections, the fiscal cost remains enormous. How do we justify this expenditure to taxpayers? Maya smiled, remembering her first terrifying night in an airport when such questions would have paralyzed her with inadequacy. Senator, the current system already costs us more than my proposal would. We're paying for emergency interventions instead of preventive care, crisis management instead of early treatment, emergency room visits instead of primary care appointments. The Healthcare Access Act doesn't increase healthcare spending. It redirects existing money toward programs that actually improve outcomes. She paused, looking directly at Senator Morrison. The question isn't whether we can afford to pass this legislation. The question is whether we can afford not to. The formal testimony continued for another hour, with Maya fielding questions about implementation timelines, administrative oversight, and coordination with existing programs. But the turning point had come with her response to Morrison's attacks. By the time she concluded her remarks, the chamber's energy had shifted decisively in favor of the bill. The Senate voted that afternoon. 73 senators supported the Healthcare Access Act, 27 opposed. As the final tally was announced, Maya felt tears of triumph mixing with disbelief. The legislation that had begun with her desperate night in Chicago O'Hare was now headed to the president's desk. The celebration that night was held at the Kane Foundation offices, with healthcare advocates, congressional staff, and community organizers who had made the victory possible. But Maya's most treasured moment came when Emma and Sophia ran to her as she entered the party. "Mommy, everyone's saying you changed the world," Emma said, hugging her tightly. "We all changed the world, sweetheart. All of us are working together." Alexander appeared beside them, holding 2 glasses of champagne and wearing an expression of pure pride. "How does it feel to be the woman who just revolutionized American healthcare?" "Overwhelming," Maya admitted, "and amazing and terrifying to think about what comes next." "What comes next?" Alexander said, setting down the champagne glasses and dropping to one knee. "Is this?" The party quieted as Alexander pulled out a ring box, his eyes never leaving Maya's face. Emma and Sophia gasped with excitement, bouncing on their toes as they realized what was happening. "Maya Rodriguez, you've taught me that the best fairy tales aren't about princesses being rescued. They're about extraordinary women rescuing themselves and then choosing to share their strength with someone who loves them completely." He opened the ring box, revealing a simple but stunning diamond surrounded by smaller stones that caught the light like stars. "Will you marry me? Will you let me spend the rest of my life supporting your dreams, raising our daughters, and proving that love stories can start in the most impossible places?" Maya looked down at the man who had first seen her potential, then around at the room full of people celebrating legislation that would help millions of families. She thought about the woman she'd been 7 months ago, desperate and afraid, and the woman she'd become, confident, successful, loved. "Yes," she said simply, and the room erupted in applause as Alexander slipped the ring onto her finger. 6 months later, Maya Rodriguez Kane stood at the altar of a small Chicago church, surrounded by the family that had grown from that chance encounter in an airport. Emma and Sophia served as flower girls, wearing matching dresses and beaming with pride as their mother married the man who had become their father in every way that mattered. The Healthcare Access Act had been signed into law, with Maya appointed as the first director of the National Healthcare Equity Initiative. Community health centers were opening across the country. Mobile clinics were serving rural areas that had never had consistent medical care, and families everywhere were discovering that healthcare could be accessible, affordable, and dignified. But as Maya looked into Alexander's eyes and spoke her wedding vows, she knew that her greatest transformation wasn't professional. It was personal. The journey from a woman who had lost everything to a woman who had found not just love, but the courage to believe she deserved it. "I promise to love you not because you rescued me," Maya said, her voice clear and strong, "but because you saw me when I couldn't see myself, because you believed in my dreams before I dared to dream them, and because you've shown Emma and Sophia that family isn't just about blood, it's about people who choose to love each other every single day." As they kissed to seal their marriage, Maya could hear Emma and Sophia cheering from the front row, could see Jennifer and Elena wiping away tears, and could feel the warmth of a community that had rallied around their love story. The woman who had once fallen asleep on a stranger's lap in an airport had awakened to discover that sometimes the most impossible dreams are the ones worth fighting for. And sometimes, if you're brave enough to fight for them, those dreams have a way of coming true in ways more beautiful than you ever imagined possible. The fairy tale was real, but the best part wasn't the rescue. It was the love that grew. From two people choosing to build something extraordinary together, one brave decision at a time. Up next, you've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hits the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.